afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, everybody. Who am I? Let's start then, before I introduce myself. What is this? I'm talking about migrating to the wiki, or what we did. What I'm going to go over today, very quick intro. Very small, very quick. After that, a nice quick little introduction of why I went to the wiki. After that, we're moving on to the strategy. That's the bulk of what I want to talk about today. What we did, why we did it, how we did it, where we did it. And after that, quick little conclusion and a thank you. Now, who am I? Michael Endres. What I'm at? Tech author. And where? At PlayStation. Specifically, I work at PlayStation Home. And at PlayStation Home, we make an SDK that we send out to the world. And developers around the world take that SDK and they make video games. And my team's job is to document that SDK. Our SDK is a combination of things. It is custom software that we make in-house, and it's software that we've customized. And every few months or so, we have the goal. We're like, you know what? We're going to update that software. We're going to release the SDK, and it makes the SDK larger. And on my team, what we do is we say, all right, we'll do the same. We'll make our documentation even larger. And we've noticed on a team of 3, with ever-increasing documentation, it gets a little bit difficult to keep it all accurate and all up-to-date all the time. And so what we did, we decided to go with the wiki. Why did we go with the wiki? Well, we went for its strengths. We went for the collaboration. Because when you get a team of people all working together, and all being given their 2 cents and everything, you end up getting a better product. Not just better documentation, but we found that you actually get a better SDK overall. On the floor, we end up having everybody as an author. So you get your expert writing first-hand information on how to do something, how to use their feature, and it increases the accuracy, it makes the product better. And on top of that, we get peer review. Since everybody's an author and also everybody can comment on anything, we can start going through everything and say, hey, that's not quite up to date. Can we fix it here? And we end up fixing it. And overall, all the documentation has an increased quality, and it's always up to date. It's fantastic. So we said, yes, great. Let's go to the wiki. Let's do it. But how? How are we going to do it? What are we going to do? We need to solve for 3 things. 3 systems, essentially. We need to figure out how we're going to design our wiki. How are we going to control the information? And then how are we going to get all the people on our floor to start using it well? How do we design the system? First, we had to go with the structure. And with our structure, we had to make everything, well, we decided to go with what Confluence does best. We went home. We used Wiki's homepage to just start everything. We took our documentation suite, it was about 35 documents, and we put it into all these very broad, but not broad exactly, they're distinct categories. We had to fit everything within here. What it did was it made all of our information, it made the architecture rather obvious, it made it distinct, and it made it very easy to build off of. So we had a very basic structure. Move on for that, we need to figure out, all right, once we have that down, how do we get everybody where they want to go? Good navigation, or rather, we need to figure out good navigation. Our navigation needed to be straightforward, it needed to be simple. And what we really wanted it to do was we wanted everybody to be able to get where they wanted to go, when they wanted to get there, immediately. We didn't want to have to go through a bunch of pages, have to load everything. We wanted from the home page, everything's there. We want the navigation bar, everything's there. And we wanted absolutely no work for anybody, especially for me. I don't like doing work. Who likes that? So what we did is we made our homepage. And what our homepage does is, as soon as you go home, you can do everything in Confluence, at least for our space. On our development team, on the top left, you have the very first thing you see is the new feature page. It uses the add page macro. Actually, quick aside, the navigation is really the only place that we use macros like crazy. We go nuts on the back end. On the front end, you don't see a lot of it, but on the back end, everything's going on. It's wonderful. So the top left, you get the new feature page. Use the add page, and what it does is, instead of our developer saying, all right, I'm going to have to, I need to make a new feature. Where do I put it? How do I put it? What do I use? Everything. It's all done for them. So it automatically labels for them. It automatically uses the right template. It automatically puts the information where it needs to go. So there's absolutely no maintenance. Beyond that, the other 2 icons are forms. Yes, we use the forms. And status. The status page is also the only other page that we use macros like crazy. Content by label, the workflow. What we have to do in navigation and on the status page is take everything that's happening on the wiki, and it automatically updates it. So essentially what we do is we make it so that way it's dynamic, it's always up to date, and there's no maintenance at all. It is wonderful. Again, I don't like doing work. Below it, you have your team pages. So you start at home, and our basic structure is it goes home and then goes to the teams. So you have all the teams, and we use page tree. And with page tree, we're able to, anytime anybody from a team updates or deletes or does anything to their team area, it automatically updates there. Again, no maintenance. Everything, all the navigation is done. We took that and we carried it to the sidebar. And the sidebar, slight bonus to this is it's categorized by team or structured by team. So using the hide to or hide from and show to, everything's, when you log in from production, you get your production icon. Below that, you get everything that's specific just to production. So no matter where I'm navigating through all of our entire space and all the information, I know that I can always get to my key pages right away. There's no work at all for anybody. And again, thank you page tree macro, because everything automatically dynamically populates. It's fantastic. So we figured out our navigation. We made it straightforward, we made it functional, and we made it simple. After that, we needed to figure out how to, if we have our structure and we have our navigation, let's say we want to reuse information somewhere else. That is, how do you single source information? How do you take a wiki page? How do you take a gorgeous model? How do you copy that gorgeous model and how do you put them in the ruins? How do you bring them over to Lisbon? Hey, I want to put them at the Eiffel Tower or bring them to Pisa. How do I do that? Well, in Confluence, actually, we don't. Instead, what we did was we went home again. We used our basic structure with Confluence to just keep all the information simple. It's fantastic. If you want to know something about objects, you just go to objects. You don't say in another page, hey, you don't copy something from one page and put it in another. So if I'm talking about scenes and I have art and say, oh, I just want to copy this over here. We don't do that. It's difficult. It's difficult from a logistics point of view to make information distinct and discrete. But we found out that we found that by not trying to repeat information, we avoid all the hassles of using macros like include or multi-excerpt, because with those first our major problem that we found with using those macros is it's impossible to track. If I've used any of these macros, how do I figure out where I've used them before? And on top of that, how do I figure out if somebody else has already used it? And how do I find that other information? It becomes a complete logistical nightmare. So instead, we went home and we kept it simple. Great. So now we've designed the background of our system. We have the structure, we figured out the navigation, we're never going to repeat anything, we're just going to point you to the right place at the right time. So now, how do you control the information? That is, in a store you have a customer, you have a cashier, and you have a manager. The customer needs to know how to buy something. The cashier needs to know how to buy everything the customer knows, plus how to use a till. The manager needs to know everything the customer and the cashier know, plus how to manage a store. In Confluence, we needed to figure out how to get the right information to the right people. We also needed to figure out how to get irrelevant information, and especially sensitive information, from getting into the wrong groups. And how do we do that? Well, we did this during development. We tackled this during development. We said, the only place we can do this is straight from the beginning, straight from the get-go. And again, we could have used macros, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but instead we went with another wiki strength, which was the templates. On the navigation, we had the add page. So everything, whenever anybody makes a new feature, all the work is already done for them. They don't have to figure out anything. So when they go and they create a new page using the template, everything else, audience control that is, information control is already also done for them. Our template is divided into 3 distinct sections. You have top over there, that's the overview. General stuff, that's what the customer needs to know. Go to your technical details, that's what the cashier needs to know. And at the bottom, internal, that's manager-only information. Very, very high-tech information, very sensitive. And this structure doesn't always work. You don't always have internal information. And sometimes the technical details need to be known by the customer. But for the most part, this works. And when it doesn't work, we're able to adapt to it because it already works so well. We control our audience, and we control the information. We control our information from the development point. So what happens when we go to publish? Well, my team is a team of 3 of technical authors, and we actually take the feature page and we copy it into new space. So take feature page, tools, copy, go over to the cashier space and just delete the internal. I know it seems very, very manual, but we tried to use all the strengths of the wiki to make this amazing, fantastic template. What this template does is it makes me redundant. I don't have to do anything. It's wonderful. Just press a button. It's the same template. It's overview, technical, internal. At the bottom, it has publish button to each space. For each area, it has multi-excerpts. So multi-excerpt here, and it's specific for a customer. Same thing here for internal for manager, and everybody always needs to know the overview. So when I want to publish to a customer space, I click the button, it uses add page, it uses the right template, it uses the right labels, and it puts it in the right area. I never have to worry about the wrong information getting into the wrong place. The only thing I have to worry about are 40 to 50 people working in this development environment, which means 40 to 50 people who could, at some point, possibly have some human error. Anytime you accidentally edit or delete a macro, everything just goes crazy, and it's impossible to bug fix. So we decided instead just to keep it simple, have 3 people manually edit as opposed to 40 to 50 people work on a complicated template that could at some point go wrong. Now, we figured out we designed our simple structure. We created information control. We figured out everything how to do it. The only thing left was to figure out how to get everybody on our floor to start using it. For our developers, the people reading the documentation, that was easy. We just said, well, we're publishing on Confluence, this is how you're going to read it. That's the easy part. Well, how do you get everybody on the floor to develop using Confluence? How did we make them do it? Well, first thing was, everybody on the floor had already bought into a new system. We wanted a system that had collaboration, where we had more teamwork. The other thing was, the managers on our team instituted feature groups. So for every new feature, there's a representative from every team on the floor, which means on every feature, there's accountability. On every single new feature page, everybody has an input, and everybody is responsible for it. And on top of that, for our team, it's required. You actually have to work on the wiki. So how do you make them use it? Well, we made them use it. Great, but how do you make them use it well? Well, this part actually was kind of already done for us. We had the simple structure, so they should really know how to, well, not really, should really know, but we made it so that way it was easy for them to figure out where everything's supposed to go. Again, if you're talking about objects, go to the object section. If you're talking about limits, go to the limit section. If you want to give compliments to me, you go to the compliments to me section. It's all clear cut and defined. It's not huge, it's not complex, but because of that, it works incredibly well. And so we got them to use it. We got them to use it well. We just needed to figure out how we were going to do the collaboration, which is why we started using the wiki in the first place. At first, what we did was we used comments, and we thought comments were going to be great. But the major problem that we found with comments was people assume that if it's in a comment, it's as good as being on the page. And it's just hard to separate that. And on top of that, in a development environment, you have a lot of people giving their say on how a feature should work and how it should interact with everything else, with the rest of the software. So you have long, lengthy debates. You can scroll for days and days and days. You can just keep on going. If you're using a touchpad, you're just going like crazy with your iPhone. It's terrible. We didn't want that. So we decided was the feature page, the wiki, the space, is going to be the source of truth. There's not going to be any debate. There's not going to be any comments there. It's all going to be right there. Everything's going to be there, and it has to be right. And we created forums instead. And the forums are basic, but they've worked a treat. Every single feature has its own thread, and everybody is able to comment and make questions on that thread. And the way we get to this to work, we've kind of enforced a community feeling, is the feature group, the people responsible for that page, are also required to respond to the forum almost immediately. So I make a question to you, and suddenly I get a response right away. It's positive feedback, it's great feedback, and as a result you start getting lots of conversation, you get a lot of talking going on. And then what happens is the people who own the page are also reading the forums, and they're constantly updating the wiki at the same time. So the wiki becomes more accurate, you get better development, and it separates all the opinions from it. So what did we do at PlayStation Home? Well, not much. We made a very simple, basic wiki. not basic, I don't want to say that. We made a very simple wiki that was easy to use for anybody. What we didn't want to do was have to sit down and teach 40 or 50 people how to use it. It's simple and it's incredibly functional. And anytime we use wiki markup, which Confluence has wikis and macros and functionality, it has bells and whistles galore. But you have to use them in the right context. You have to use them on pages that aren't going to be edited a lot. So that's why on our navigation, and that's why on pages that don't change, they're filled with macros. So that way everything happens automatically. There's no work for us whatsoever. And it's functional and it's absolutely low maintenance. And as a result, all of us at PlayStation Home are now able to actually develop video games instead of trying to figure out how we're going to develop video games. Thank you.